Financial Argument. Follow us on YouTube.
And with us today is Kerry Lutz from the Financial Survival Network. Kerry, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, a pleasure, Elijah. It's great catching up with you.
Definitely. It's great catching up with you as well. And I wanted to first catch up with you on your thoughts on where the economy is right now. I know one of the things on the intro for all of your interviews that you do, one of the taglines is, investing in this new economy, surviving in this new economy. So can you explain a little bit about this new economy and basically your overall impression of where the U.S. economy is headed?
Yeah, well, the new economy, I can contrast it to the old economy. The old economy was go to college and get your degree. It almost didn't matter what it was in. And there was a job waiting for you, a career, and, just play by the rules of the system and everything was going to work out great for you. And, that was the way that things were back then. I hate to sound like I'm old or anything. It's like when I was a kid, that's the way it was. Go to college, get a degree, and it was your ticket to the upper middle class. And it just isn't that way anymore. I mean, you can still do well if you go to college, don't get me wrong, but you got to have a strategy for doing it. You can't be taking women's studies or human studies or ridiculous majors. And I think you have to grow up a little faster and be a little practical, more practical. You have to come up with strategies to minimize your educational outlay and try to avoid going into debt to do it. And so the new economy is a lot different than the old economy. A lot of times you're not going to be working for a company anymore. You'll be working for yourself on a contract basis. There's opportunities in the new economy that didn't exist in the old economy, but I think it's harder because I think you're a lot more on your own in the new economy than you were in the old economy. So, and as far as where the economy is at now, it's just kind of limping along, which it has been for the past 9 years. If you're on Wall Street, if you're doing something finance related, then you think everything is wonderful. But if you're not, then it's not so wonderful. And that's what you quickly learn if you bother to take a look outside your door. Once you're outside these little enclaves, life is a lot tougher than it used to be. And the middle class has been in a pronounced state of decline since the crash. Credit much harder to get and much harder to maintain your standard of living.
Definitely. And I guess, where do you see the U.S. dollar heading? Because I know previous times when I've had you on, you were saying that there was going to be this dollar collapse happening in the future. Do you still think that is ahead?
I've always believed that the dollar would be the last to go because the dollar's based, the whole system's based on the U.S. dollar. I just thought the whole state of collapse would perhaps happen sooner, but at some point, it just can't sustain itself. There's too much debt, and we're not paying down the debt or even not taking on more debt. We're just taking on more and more debt at a faster and faster rate, and that's at all levels of society. And then what you've had overseas is that they did a big short bet on the dollar, and as a result, they've had to pay back all these debts in dollars, so that's bid up the dollar. So I've always said the dollar would be the last to go, and nothing has really changed to change my opinion on that. So I don't know what the timing is going to be. I've always said that. I thought it would be here a lot sooner, but of course the U.S. would be the last to go because the U.S. is the underpinning of the entire system. So that's kind of where we're at.
Now, how does this whole Trump phenomenon that we just, saw pop up, in the last year or so, where with already the ballooning national debt, and you're saying that we're headed towards a collapse for the U.S. dollar, and the economy seems to just be trudging along and seems to be ready to collapse. And then we see Trump come on the scene. No one really expected this, and everyone was laughing at him, and it seems like he's just, in some ways shaking things up. What is your perspective on the Trump phenomenon, and how does it impact things?
Well, actually, I saw Trump speak at Freedom Fest in July of 2015, and at that point, I knew he was going to win. And if you listen to my shows from that point on, pretty much said he was going to win. And I didn't really have many doubts about it, except for a couple of days before the election, but I really was pretty steadfast in that. I knew all along he was going to win. I knew in your home state he was going to take it away. I knew in my home state of Florida, Wisconsin, I spent a lot of time, more than I care to discuss, in the Midwest, and the Midwest just been screwed. But on the other hand, if you read any of my newsletters, Trump cannot save the system. The system is too far gone for him to really change it. And you see the blowback he's getting from the globalists and from both parties. Both political parties are just crime families. And when you look at them as crime families, then their behavior becomes much more understandable. You just have to go watch a movie like Goodfellas or Casino. Actually, Casino is much better because they take the skim from the casinos, and then they go to the mob bosses and they split it up. And that's more or less what happens with the American economy. They take their cut, their skim, and then the bosses get together and split it up amongst their favorite parties. And, as long as it's run like a mob family, or run as if it were run by mob families, not much is going to change. So Trump's in that consolidation phase. I like the fact that he's a workaholic and he's surrounded by workaholics. But in terms of him being able to fundamentally change anything, I'll reserve judgment.
Ned, it seems like at least the way the markets reacted to the election, initially there was this big sell-off, but the next day they turned around and it seems like there's this Trump euphoria. People are really thinking that Trump is going to be great for the economy. Do you think he could at least kick the can down the road a little bit more?
I believe that the markets were pre-programmed. Hillary Clinton was supposed to win, and then the market was going to go up. And then all of a sudden, so, oops, Hillary didn't win. Trump won. Okay, the market's going to go up. It was like either way, the market was going to go up. That was my take on it. It had a phoniness about it, a fraudulent feel about it, and it was just supposed to happen that way. So as far as him able to really affect this, I will take it back. If there is a major disaster in the world and he's able to really consolidate power and bring it all together, then I'll say perhaps. But let's see what happens. I can't say. It's Yogi Berra said it's very hard to make predictions, especially about the future, and this is no exception. So, but the machine, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, the system, the guy in Full Metal Jacket said, men will live and die, but the Marine Corps is forever. Men will come and go. Politicians, presidents will live and die, but the deep state, the bureaucratic administrative state is forever. So till I see something change it, I'll believe it when I see it.
Now I'd like to discuss preparing, and I was wondering if you had any new insights regarding how to prepare for the coming crisis. I know we've had you on our show before and you've talked about investing in precious metals and hard assets. You recently had Mark Nessman on your show, and he was talking about, always having a plan B. Did you want to discuss this kind of plan B and your thoughts on if all breaks loose, how can you be prepared for that?
Well, I've always believed have some emergency preparedness food, have some self-defense tools, shall we say, some water. But, you should have that anyway, because you never know if your grid's going to get disrupted by, here in Florida, you could have a hurricane, you could have flooding, you could have bad storms. You're in the earthquake belt, you could have a quake. So you should always have a couple weeks worth of food. Precious metals just seems to me it's a hedge against chaos, an insurance policy. How much you want to do is up to you. It seems to me that at some point they'll continue their increase going up again. If they don't go up, their purchasing power will go up because there'll be a massive deflation. Certain things are just going to happen, and why not prepare for them? And you prepare as best as you can, but it's very, very difficult to actually prepare for the inevitable. If you walk into a movie theater and at some point there's going to be a fire in that movie theater, but you don't know when during the movie it's going to happen, you have to be there for whatever reason. You don't know when it's going to happen in the movie theater, and you don't know where it's going to happen, but you know it's going to happen. So you scope out your exits, you make your exit plan, and then you're just kind of sitting around waiting. And maybe it'll happen 5 minutes after you get there, and maybe it's going to happen 1 minute before the movie ends. So either, no matter what happens, you're going to be surprised when it does happen. But at least if you have a plan, you have some idea what to do, as opposed to all the other people in that movie theater who never bothered to look and see where the exits were and how to get the heck out of there, and what to do if one exit's blocked and the other one isn't. I mean, I'm a kind of strange person. When I go to a hotel, I always check out the exit plan by the elevators and look for the nearest exit to my room. When I go to a nightclub or a bar, I look for the exits. And when I go to that movie theater, I look for the exits. Even on an airplane, I kind of check out where the nearest exit is. I know I'm not going to need it, but if I happen to, I'll be one of the only people that will get out of that place, because the rest of them are going to get stuck panicking, trying to figure out how to get out or what to do next. I won't have to think about it because I'll know what to do. But when you're planning what to do when the economy goes south or there's civil unrest or something else, it's a lot harder. It's not like finding the exits in a smoky movie theater.
All right. Well, Kerry Lutz, thank you so much for your time today. Before we let you go, I was wondering, you being, an independent financial talk show host, I was wondering if you could maybe give our viewers a perspective on, what should they really be paying attention to right now, in the news? Because some of the time we can get so distracted with, just all the noise in the news right now. What are some good sources of news nowadays, and what should we really be paying attention to?
Well, I think you need to be paying attention to not so much the actual news, but the undercurrents of the news, the trends. I'm much more concerned about trends and cycles than the actual news. I want to see really just the fabric, social unrest. I'm looking for that, signs of it. I'm looking for militarization. I'm looking, not paranoia, mind you. I'm just looking for trends. I think this thing with the surveillance is a big trend that we've seen for years. It's just a confirmation of the trend. I'm looking for, when I see people, 30% of the population doesn't have $2,000, if they have an emergency, that's a trend. So I want to see what the trends in society are. I'm looking at debt increase trend. Those are what I'm really looking for. I don't look for particular news items, although I look at that for more entertainment. I look at the trend of the parties not being able to govern and seeing if that trend's getting worse, getting better, or is it just kind of the same? And then look at just other things like that. It's just really trying to get a handle on where things are heading. It's much more important to look at that than to look at the day-to-day news. It's like looking at day-to-day stock prices, gold prices, or any other market. It tells you like half a chapter in the middle of a story. It doesn't really tell you the story. You need to take the 30,000-foot view to get what's really going on.
All right. Once again, Kerry Lutz, thank you so much for your time. Where can our viewers find you, and any last thoughts you had?
Sure. FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. And just don't panic and just hope for the best, but just prepare for the worst. And just for your own personal situation, just find additional income sources, large and small, and just keep doing it.
Once again,